I mean, first of all, I love the projects, right? I think the one that you highlighted in the top left of the initial concept, I mean, I think that's pretty spot on.
You know, you probably haven't had time to digest it yet. Whether we have our own thoughts about a couple of them being, you know, stronger candidates than the others.
The only thing I could possibly think of is maybe, I know I'm being annoying when I keep bringing up the whole little crow's nest idea, right? But you'd be surprised how many clients I have talking about it.
We've got it in the notes, don't worry, we haven't forgotten.
Like my one annoying thing I keep bringing up, right?
Okay, these things grab attention, and they're memorable, and that's important.
When my son was younger, he'd sit there and go through this nature encyclopedia. And we'd go over where do we want to go, or we talk about blue spruce trees versus deciduous trees and different animals and where they were, you know, and he would be so into that book. When you can put things of wonder in front of younger eyes, it has a huge impact on them rather than any computer screen can, right, or anything on TV. And so if you can put this beautiful expedition boat forward, build them an encyclopedia of nature, which is your expedition boat, and that can show you the world. That's what the whole expedition side of the market, I think that's why it has my attention, because it's something that inspires me. We've put together a team to present to you Project Above and Beyond. Project Above and Beyond is actually a series of projects. The first one, or the smaller one, is going to be a 65-meter, roughly 1,200 to 1,400 gross tons. The second project is going to be a larger 85-meter project that's roughly 2,200 gross tons. In Fort Lauderdale, right around the corner, is Turquoise, so we've gotten to know each other pretty well, shooting ideas back and forth at each other, and the whole idea came up of, you know, reached for the stars and mentioned, you know, Bannenberg and Rowell, and he said, well, you know, if you can make it happen, let's do it.
Every project, although there may be some similarity of platform engineering that has been able to be carried over from one to the other, they all obviously have their own custom setup, and that's the thing that I think distinguishes Turquoise quite significantly. That
Absolutely.
We really are true custom builders, and we have that in-house expertise to engineer and then to build as the owner chooses to express themselves.
I think that's kind of the epitome of what Turquoise is, right? They're building custom, beautiful boats with designers from all over the world, and the quality that's coming out of there right now is something that has to be respected, not just as a Turkish builder, but as a premier builder in the world. That is sweet.
It's a journey with a team, and the client's part of that team, shipyard's part of that team, and we're part of that team, and I think that's pretty cool.
Broker's part of that team too.
I didn't want to mention Broker.
Okay. Explorer really is, you know, it's as much a state of mind in some sense. Go off the beaten track a bit, in search of privacy as the new luxury.
Illustrates that we're hardwired for curiosity, right? I mean, that's what we're plugging into here with this new era of yachts, which are perhaps less about drifting around on placid waters and are more adventurous, they're more curious, and they represent exactly what you've described, a certain DNA there.
Turquoise did not become what it is today overnight. You know, it's got 50 years of heritage dating back to the 1970s. When you have a buyer that's looking for a full custom project, still looking for that value, Turquoise has been that yard. I love the international flavors that surround Project Above and Beyond. We brought together an American-based brokerage firm with a British-based designer in Bannenberg and Rowell with a Turkish shipyard in Turquoise. We're going to be visiting the two locations for Turquoise Yachts. One of them is their finishing yard. The other one is where all the metal work goes together, building the hulls and superstructures of their yachts.
We have two main areas, our engineering and interior design and our project management area. Floor below, we have our management. The floor below that, production and purchasing. My name is Burak Akgül. My formal role is the executive director, and I'm more concentrated on our outward-facing activities. 500 employees and about another 500 who come through the gates, because we have this gate and the other facility in Kocaeli. So around 1,000 coming through the respective gates. We have about 87 engineers and architects And up here you basically see the setup of the division between the two. On the left-hand side here is the engineering design. So the various disciplines of engineering design being structures, systems engineering.
My name is Ibrahim. I have been working here for the last 15 years. We never prefer to keep designers in a box. We would like them to come up with any idea, because we always prefer to say actually yes to any request, because there's always a way to make it happen.
This is the first of the new 80-meter platform that is the basis for Beyond. And as we look at the other models, as we'll go around the room here, we'll see how different the same underpinnings can be. So our engine room, lower deck level for the crew area, tender garages, beach club, which obviously we can adapt. As we come up onto main deck and the decks above, it's a completely open season as to how one deals with it.
That's where the customization starts,
exactly,
based on the hull platform, the 13.2 hull platform, the 80 platform. Right?
Precisely. This particular vessel is 79 meters LOA, so length overall, so she's, let's say, slightly smaller, but still 2,100 gross tons, so a big boat. But if we come over here now, as you can see, a very different design on the same hull platform, but we have lengthened the aft end for a specific detail, which I'll tell you in a second. But again, the same crew area, technical spaces below on tank deck, engine room, and then coming to a very much larger beach club area because it has this float-in garage for one of the tenders.
Yeah.
With a double door, so you can have it open but not flooded, or open the whole hatch and have
and then you have your vents where you dump it once the boat's in. It looks like,
exactly. You can see all this cabling here and the cabling here as it's routed up to its respective.
And there's a huge amount of, I mean, kilometers of cabling through a boat like this.
This boat, I think we're above 150 kilometers.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a phenomenal amount of cable work. Yeah, exactly. And as we know, copper keeps rising in value, so let's go up one more deck. Everything is basically modeled. Your structure, your piping, your cable trays, your machinery and equipment and panels, etc., valves, everything is modeled. But what is distinctive in our case is that we're also modeling the individual cables. If you know that that's 150 rather than 140, it makes a difference to your purchasing, and it makes a difference also to the, more importantly, to the organization of the job as well.
My name is Bedül Döşemeciler. I'm in the Turquoise family for almost 18 years. For exteriors and interiors, we are working with worldwide known designers. They imagine something, but we try to turn it into something buildable. We are trying to bring together aesthetics and technical solutions together.
It's very simple. Turquoise is Turquoise. Yes, we're located in Turkey. Yes, we're Turkish. We are Turquoise.
Turquoise Yachts has two main yards. They've got one in Pendik, and then we have the one behind us here in the free trade zone, where they handle all of their steel and aluminum works. All of their hull construction and the superstructure comes together behind me. Here we see an 87 meter, a 76 meter, a 74 meter, right? All being assembled in the same shed. That's amazing. In the assembly halls here, they're working with two different types of metal, right? So you have steel hulls and aluminum superstructures. So in this particular hull, they're only working with aluminum, so they're only building together the pieces of the superstructure that's obviously going to be sitting on the steel hull. Cut from the machine, the CNC machine, then it's brought over here and welded together. You know, nobody really thinks about this when you're putting together a yacht. You think about the beauty, the interior designer, but all the engineering, all the naval architecture that goes into putting these pieces together. Without that foundation, there's no yachting, right? Each build stage is equally important in its own aspect, right? So first you have the welding, you have the puzzle pieces that come together to form the hull and the superstructure. You've got your interior decor. You have your fit and finish. And part of that fit and finish that is so important is the fairing work and the paint work. That really is what makes your jewel shine. It makes you stand out from the rest. And Turquoise has invested a huge amount of time and money into making sure that they're one of the best in the world at putting that together at the very end. Putting everything into perspective on building these massive yachts, 2 or 3 all coming together, all being custom built in such a balancing act it all affects the end quality of the product. You've got an extremely professional team, and the quality that's coming out of there right now is something that has to be respected, not just as a Turkish builder, but as a premier builder in the world. It's no longer one of the best kept secrets in the industry. Turkey is on the up, it's gonna continue to be on the up, and at the top of that drive is Turquoise Yachts. Bannenberg and Rowell, London-based design firm, one of the iconic names in the yachting industry today, focusing on both interior and exterior design, comprised of Dickie Bannenberg and Simon Rowell, an amazing supporting cast.
So I'm Simon Rowell. I'm the creative director of Bannenberg and Rowell and have been for the last 20 years. We have one overriding project amongst all our other projects, which is the Bannenberg and Rowell project, for want of a better word. We take that pretty seriously about how that's presented, what legacy it leaves, and hopefully we're doing a good job carrying on in many of the same sectors, interior design, exterior design, and everything, just as Dickie's dad did.
Many magazines do sort of lists of the 20 most sort of iconic boats or something. Corinthia almost always comes top of that list. And what's so interesting is when she first appeared in 1972, people stepped back in horror, saying, what is this sort of unbelievable thing which has arrived from, from space? And now, if somebody wanted to reference, an absolutely discreet classic yacht, it would probably be Corinthia. Anyway, I'm Dickie Bannenberg. Dickie Bannenberg of no title really. But if you really want one, it's I suppose founder of the studio in its second era. In our studio here, just off near the King's Road, we have study models out of various of our projects. That's a 73 metre, that's 135 metre, going all the way up to our never built, but designed to every nut and bolt 228 metre. Building something from scratch or designing something from scratch. I love the reward of that. To get to complete that journey and see somebody happy with what they've got is pretty unbeatable.
Okay, so someone says, well, I like the look of so-and-so shipyard's latest yacht. So they go to that shipyard, sometimes with the help of a less skilled broker, and they start this journey with the shipyard. No problem with that. And
just to be clear, just making sure he doesn't upset brokers and shipyards in the same conversation.
So then they're building up sort of a shape of this yacht in its virtual form. But it's not going to look like this. It's not going to look like the last yacht. It's going to look like my yacht. So way down the line they think, well, okay, what's it going to look like? The shipyard may do some sketches. Different shipyards have different facilities in-house, right? And sometimes they think, well, better get an exterior designer onto this. Well, that's mad. Even further down the road, they think, what's it going to look like inside? Well, I don't know. Well, how do I know what I'm going to get, the client says. Well, you're going to get something that looks like that's the same level of specification as our last boat. Oh, we better get some interior designers in. So the interior designer comes even later. This is the wrong way to design anything. I think people think of boats quite often as it's a bit like when we had to do a train. The GA was understandably long and thin.
My favourite GA drawing in our collection, which rolls out about as long as these two desks.
It wasn't far.
And it's about that wide, 8 carriages or something like that.
But I think it's quite easy to think of boat design and its compartments as quite restrictive. So I think we like to explore, we like to push against that a bit. We've been doing this 20 years in its second iteration, the studio. Every 2 or 3 years you can perceive, one hopes, a satisfactory sort of milestone passed. For example, 2016, that first exterior all at a really top-notch shipyard, absolutely beautifully constructed. That's obviously wonderful. But in fact, there are sort of minor versions of that. A project that makes it through to completion that really feels it still has the connection to the concept and the original thinking. Each one of those is a sort of victory, I think. You can get an enormous amount of satisfaction out of that. So it doesn't have to be the biggest or the first or the whitest or the shiniest or the glassiest. I think it's about whether that's got through a very complicated process and kept that initial target concept. I think that's very satisfying. We literally start with flow diagrams and compartments. And Jake and I, for example, on this project, and actually on all projects, we move very quickly to try and show this is what it could look like.
Being the explorer yacht that it is, everything utility-wise has been pushed towards the aft of the boat. So these are just the doors that open, exposing sort of any toy stores or any sort of equipment that is on board.
I'm going to call them artist impressions because they are. They're a possible outcome for the nuts and bolts work that's going on with that synthesis of ideas and layouts. We then just say, okay, let's take that through various iterations. Some of them are going to work, some of them are going to look silly, and it could be the angle of the windows and making sure that that's the same throughout. This is a completely different feature to this, but we're going to explore it, see if it's still complementary with some of the angles. If we think, well, actually that's not quite working, what about a solid, assertive, vertical stop for this window aperture in the hull? Perhaps not. Perhaps it's a hybrid of the two. Perhaps we can link an angular cut in the hull with angles elsewhere on the vessel. And some of those get quite extreme. They get quite origami-like as we extrapolate that through the three-dimensional elements on the boat. And I think probably that is most representative of where we leave this phase and we move on to, well, let's put a bit more flesh on the bones of that. Go back to even Corinthia, which is one of the most famous John Bannenberg design. You know, there's an element of that really forward-looking stance. Even Joy, which is very sculpted and very finessed. This is actually a little bit more obviously junctioned components. What we're going to try and do is show the possibilities without being too prescriptive and saying the 85 has to do this. But here are two ways of thinking about an expedition yacht. Right. We have another sort of parallel conversation. We don't want what we clothe the yacht in to be incongruous with its function. Even something that's built on a platform, it's a prototype and you've got one chance to get it right. Keep it tight, get the best people, and you have a slicker process.
You know, over the years, I've gone and focused on the expedition market, and I've heard from clients, and we've gone over different features, right? I keep talking about this crow's nest thing, right? How cool would it be sitting up in a little crow's nest? Going through Antarctica, you could be bundled up in like all your parkas and your cold gear, and you're cruising along, and you're on top of the world, right? If we can incorporate those designs into an explorer, like a proper explorer to go around the blue planet, that's what we should do.
Above and Beyond is a very exciting opportunity, honestly, to have a two-pronged approach of drawing in some alternative interest, let's say, compared to what we have already on our platform of our larger yachts. And here we have this fifth, rather different and certainly distinctive version by our friends in London.
If you look at the Turkish approach to shipbuilding and yacht design, there's a slightly harder edge to what they may naturally do. And I think that's an opportunity to take a little bit of that and say, okay, forget about trying to do what everyone else has been doing for 30 years. This is what Turkish yachting is about. Leapfrog over that and say, well, this is where we see the future of yachting. And it fits really well.
Maybe there's a client out there who's sitting there wanting to do this for so long and hasn't seen the right project or something that can fulfill his dreams of doing something epic with his family, circumnavigating or going to push ice around with the boat. And then he sees this project and says, that's what I've been looking for. If the story we've told and the journey we've taken you on really resonates with you, this could be the project for you. You know, whether it's above or beyond, we want to inspire that person out there watching this to want to come to us and say, let's do it, let's build this project, let's make it a reality. And that's what this journey has been all about. That's what my career's been about, to make my clients proud, it's make the shipyard proud. And if this resonates true with you, then come be a part of it and let's make this a reality.